The games industry continues to grow at a rapid pace, with new games releasing left, right, and center. Naturally, some games are better than others. And then there are the games that have managed to etch their names in our collective minds through their innovation and quality. With this feature, we'll be taking a look at 30 of the best games of all time. Also, keep in mind, there is a fair chance that some of your favorite games may not be listed here. It's impossible to please everyone with lists like these, but with that out of the way, let's begin. Tekken 8. Tekken is one of the oldest and most revered fighting franchises of all time, and that prolonged status of prestige can be attributed to the developer's consistent innovation with each new entry. Tekken 8 has recently been released to great critical and commercial reception, and it represents a big leap over its predecessors in more ways than one. With a new heat system that prioritizes aggressive play and shiny new visuals courtesy of Unreal Engine 5, Tekken 8 is arguably the series at its best. Forza Horizon 5. Forza Horizon 5 is a game that feels like a love letter to gearheads. It pays due tribute to the artistry of cars and everything surrounding it, and it's a game that's just a blissful experience from start to finish. There's just something special about cruising down a highway while seated in a luxury sports car, all the while the sun shines down and casts a beautiful reflection across the shiny coat of exterior paint of your car. Forza Horizon 5 has no shortage of such moments, and its ingenious progression system hooks the player for hours and doesn't let go. Uncharted 2: Among Thieves. Arguably one of Naughty Dog's finest works to date, Uncharted 2: Among Thieves is the perfection of the formula that started with the first game. Nathan Drake's journey of finding a coveted treasure is consistently a thrilling adventure that rarely takes its foot off the gas, treating the player with one beautifully choreographed set-piece sequence after another. Everything from the platforming to the charismatic characters and the gorgeous locales come together to create an experience unlike any other. Alien Isolation. Alien Isolation is a game that has perhaps not received as much love as it should have, and that's a shame because it's a genuinely great horror game with an interesting trick up its sleeve. Unlike traditional horror games where jump scares are heavily choreographed, Alien Isolation Xenomorph has an intelligent brain that adapts to your playstyle, and that keeps the feeling of cat and mouse chase consistent throughout its run. Add to that some amazing atmosphere, and Alien Isolation becomes a game that will become the reason for your nightmares long after the credits roll. Marvel's Spider-Man 2. Insomniac Games took what worked in Spider-Man 2018 and Miles Morales and meshed it all together in a big open world with the sequel, Marvel's Spider-Man 2. While that description may sound reductive, Spider-Man 2 is everything we previously saw but polished to an immaculate sheen. The story of Kraven's Last Hunt is filled with plenty of amazing scenes, and all characters get appropriate screen time to shine and build out their character arcs. New suit abilities make combat more interesting, and the boss battles peppered throughout the experience are equal parts thrilling and surprising. In all honesty, Spider-Man 2 makes you feel like the friendly neighborhood webhead. Street Fighter 6. Much like Tekken 8 as we discussed previously, Street Fighter has also managed to remain relevant through decades off the back of its consistent innovation of its fighting mechanics. Street Fighter 6 is the latest chapter in the saga, and it takes the learnings accrued from past outings and morphs them into a rather unique open world structure with new World Tour mode. What we get is a game that's bursting with new ideas while still remaining true to its core, and that makes Street Fighter 6 one of the best fighting games that you can play right now. Dead Space 2023. Dead Space is easily one of the best horror games of recent memory, and EA Motive has done a fabulous job of recreating it from scratch and rebuilding it in a way that caters to both new and returning fans. In addition to a massive visual overhaul, Dead Space Remake adds entire new areas, side quests, and weapon upgrades into the mix that make going for a second trip through the USG Ishimura a worthwhile experience. Many of these improvements are iterative in nature, but that only speaks volumes about the quality of the original version and its timeless nature that all holds up surprisingly well today. Control. Control is not just a great game in its own right, it's also an important game for the AA games industry at large. Jesse Faden's journey of clearing out the mysterious hiss from the FBC is bursting with creativity, right from the brutalist architecture of the building to its borderline eccentric narrative and its power-driven gameplay, and much more. Despite having a middling budget that honestly shows in certain aspects of the game, Control's excellent suite of ideas is something that can put many of the biggest AAA titles to shame. Half-Life 2. Much like the original Half-Life, Valve's sequel to this runaway success is also considered to be a revolutionary game. Half-Life 2 took what worked in the original and spins an even crazier game with larger set pieces, huge levels, and interesting physics-based puzzles that are just the right amount of brain work for players. It's a showcase of how to create an enthralling action adventure that's punctuated with memorable firefights and set pieces galore. And while some of its elements haven't aged that well, Half-Life 2 remains a blast through and through. Resident Evil 2 2019. Resident Evil 2 delivered a wonderful reimagining of a horror classic with its 29 remake. Despite taking players on a familiar ride from a different lens, Resident Evil 2 manages to capture the same feelings of hopelessness and desperation as you slowly trudge through the abandoned rooms of the police station, all while the undead zombies lie in wait for a chance to chew you down to bits. The visuals are a fantastic evolution of the original, and Leon's unpredictable encounters with Mr. X never fail to add another layer of tension to the entire affair. God of War Ragnarok. Ragnarok provides a fitting conclusion to the saga that started with 2018's original, and this sequel is emblematic of all the traits that made the first so iconic. The campaign carries the same elements of spinning mysteries into uncharted territory before looping back to surprising reveals, and that paired with the excellent visuals is what will keep you hooked to the edge of your screen at all times. Of course, the combat has also seen major improvements, and there are plenty of boss fights that will test the extent of your fighting capabilities, which all round out the game. Metal Gear Solid 2: Sons of Liberty. Picking one Metal Gear Solid game out of the lot can be a tough task since each of the games is a classic in its own right. But Metal Gear Solid 2: Sons of Liberty was a game that was way ahead of its time. With Sons of Liberty, Kojima spins an intricate tale filled with never-ending conspiracies and plot twists, all based on a common theme of the rapid spread of misinformation, which is highly relatable in this day and age. Between this and a gameplay loop that surprisingly holds up to this date, Metal Gear Solid 2 is an unmissable adventure for fans. Mass Effect 2. Mass Effect 2 is a glorious space opera that tells the story of Commander Shepard's fight against the titular Collectors, and that sprawling journey is punctuated by a ton of memorable firefights and branching interactions with intriguing characters. It also features a complex web of gameplay mechanics that combines tactical elements with action-packed shooting, and that makes for a thrilling ride through and through. Monster Hunter World. The monster hunting genre is on an upward spiral as of late, but if we had to pick one of our favorites from the many games from the genre, it has to be Monster Hunter World. Released back in 2018, Monster Hunter World thrusts players into a gorgeous map brimming with all sorts of fierce beasts waiting to be bested in battle. There's a surprising amount of depth in building out your character with different weapons and armor, and the constant loop of getting stronger through well-earned victories is something that will keep you playing for hundreds of hours without getting bored. Starfield. Starfield might not have been everything that fans wanted out of it, but it's safe to say that it was a really fun experience regardless. Bethesda's signature attention to detail can be seen in full force here, right from the NASA punk designs to the many meaningful quests that can be found peppered throughout its massive open world, and even how the combat has been made more engaging and fluid. It's a vast RPG complete with a complex web of interweaving mechanics and skill trees, and it's a game that is really worth sinking your teeth into for a long time. Super Mario Odyssey. Nintendo has continued doing an amazing job with the mustached Italian plumber, and Mario games have consistently experimented with new mechanics that have kept them fun and relevant through the multiple decades. 2017 Super Mario Odyssey is a shining beacon of those very characteristics, and it's a game that will leave you teeming with happiness throughout its run. The ingenious hat throw mechanic makes traversal more expressive, and the sandbox levels challenge you to combine those tools and collect the many moons that are peppered throughout these immaculately laid out jungle gyms. And once all is said and done, you are rewarded with one of the best epilogues of gaming as Mario hops through obstacles to wrap up the post-game experience. Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice. Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice is a spiritual successor to FromSoft's Tenchu series, and it's everything that one would want from such a game. Set against the backdrop of Sengoku Japan, Sekiro is a hard-boiled tale of loyalty as the titular wolf embarks on a grand quest to save his master from the evil clutches of Genichiro Ashina. Sekiro's combat loop is a careful dance of frame-perfect parries and smart use of prosthetic extensions, and players have no choice but to master that meticulous ballet if they wish to reach the end credits. Between this and simple yet interesting stealth mechanics, Sekiro Shadows Die Twice is a faithful action-adventure game that will stay with you long after the credits roll. Horizon Forbidden West. Guerrilla Games painted a beautiful post-apocalypse with Horizon Zero Dawn with its open world that feels like a perfect juxtaposition of our past and future. The contrast between tribal humans living in settlements and technology-driven machines roaming the grasslands has a very enchanting vibe to it. And the sequel, Forbidden West, takes those concepts and refines them to a T. It tells a riveting tale of Aloy racing against time to save her planet from the mysterious corruption, and that story is punctuated with plenty of memorable encounters with fierce machines. The sprawling open world provides no shortage of interesting activities to pursue, which makes Horizon Forbidden West an extremely engaging game that can be enjoyed for dozens of hours. Bloodborne. In so many ways, Bloodborne feels like a love letter to horror and Souls fans. Right from its dark Victorian London aesthetic to the nightmarish creatures that inhabit its deserted streets and its dreamy yet dreary narrative, Bloodborne is as much a horror game as it is an action-adventure game. From Software changed up its combat formula for the better, forcing players to be more aggressive with their attacks and make judicious use of silver bullets to stun enemies for extra damage. Some of the best bosses in the entirety of the Souls series belong to Bloodborne, and it's a masterclass of a game that deserves to be experienced by every horror fan. Dark Souls. From Software's 2011 release, Dark Souls is a game that was more than just an action RPG. In an era where AAA games were getting used to watering down their mechanics to appeal to the largest possible audience, Dark Souls forced players to play by its own rules, taking them through an increasingly difficult journey with little in the name of reprieve. In addition to its harsh but fair difficulty, Dark Souls also pioneered interconnected world design with its complex map that's full of shortcuts and back alleys that connect different areas to one another. Add to that some impressive lore elements and flexibility in build crafting, and Dark Souls becomes an unmissable adventure for fans. Grand Theft Auto V. It's safe to say that Grand Theft Auto V might just be one of the most successful games of all time, and it's also safe to say that it has transcended its status from a mere video game about wreaking havoc into a pop culture icon. Michael's story of returning to a world of violence is brought to life with layered gameplay mechanics and adrenaline-pumping heist missions that make for an absolute thrill ride. The open world is filled with gorgeous locales to explore and characters to meet. And if that's not enough, GTA Online continues to be an ever-evolving part of the experience that fans just can't seem to get enough of. The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim is an RPG that's brimming with stuff to do, things to pursue, various challenges, secrets to uncover, and much more. Between this and the flexible nature of its gameplay, Skyrim is just as much a sandbox of possibilities as it is a carefully constructed open world. Despite it being more than 10 years old at this point, fans just can't seem to get enough of it, and Bethesda continues to provide more avenues to experience this classic on every new platform on the market. It's obvious that some might find this business tactic even cheap, but that also speaks volumes about the timeless nature of Skyrim. The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt is CD Projekt Red's magnum opus. Taking place in a fantastical world inhabited by all manner of ghastly spirits and fierce monsters, The Witcher 3 tells an engaging story of Geralt going through all odds to find his lost daughter Ciri. It's a massive game brimming with swaths of content, and the best part of it all is it is extremely quality stuff. Whether you're taking part in a monster hunt or going through the main story or even completing one of its many side quests, The Witcher 3 remains a quality single-player experience through and through. Add to that some incredibly strong writing, multiple endings, and a picturesque world, and it becomes a game where you could literally spend thousands of hours without reaching the end credits. Dragon's Dogma 2. Dragon's Dogma 2 is easily one of the biggest surprises of 2024. It borrows several gameplay mechanics from systemic open-world games, but manages to flesh them out further, delivering an engaging experience. Coupled with an in-depth vocation system, pawns to recruit, flexible character building, and challenging bosses to fight against, Dragon's Dogma 2 spins a vast net of ideas that come together to create an intriguing RPG brimming with imagination and quality content. Sure, there are a few quirks, including but not limited to occasionally janky gameplay and comparatively bland visuals, but the merits easily outshine those flaws by a significant margin. The Last of Us. The Last of Us Part 1 is one of those games that put a strong case for the medium as a legitimate form of storytelling. Joel and Ellie don't start out on the best of terms, but through the magic of journeys and the hardships that they face, they are able to create a strong bond by the end of it all. The characters herein are beautifully complex with realistic motivations and gray morality, which helps in selling the sheer brutality of this post-apocalyptic world. In terms of gameplay, The Last of Us meshes elements of action, horror, and stealth in a rather ingenious way that will keep you glued to the edge of the screen at all times. There's a very palpable sense of tension as you carefully tiptoe across abandoned houses and can hear the faint shrieks of a stalker or the distant gurgling of a bloater. Naughty Dog also manages to mix things up with the occasional set piece or character development that makes The Last of Us so hard to put down. The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom. The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild felt like a breath of fresh air, no pun intended, in an open-world market saturated with cookie-cutter games that aggressively hold a player's hand. Breath of the Wild offered a refreshing sense of freedom with its combat and impressive physics engine, and those aspects are taken to the skies, literally, with Tears of the Kingdom. A bigger setting that spans the skies above and the darkness beneath. New abilities like Fuse and Ultra Hand, and better quest designs are just some of the improvements that the sequel makes over the original. It can put the measly switch to its paces with its heavy gameplay, but it just might be the best game that you can play on this platform. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Final Fantasy VII Remake is considered to be one of the best RPGs of all time, and to develop a follow-up that would aim to top it was a challenging prospect. Thankfully, Rebirth does an outstanding job not only with its world design but also with its several gameplay mechanics, featuring a main campaign that could last close to 40 hours along with tons of side content. You would easily find yourself lost in this massive world. Baldur's Gate 3. Developer Larian delivered a great RPG with Baldur's Gate 3, a game that has shocked developers and gamers alike with its massive scale that goes hand in hand with the level of micro detail in every aspect of the experience. Everything from the combat, where you're free to mix and match different spells and tactics, to the campaign that can go on several different tangents depending upon your choices, Baldur's Gate 3 is a game that will leave you awestruck with its attention to detail. All that combined with a wonderfully well-realized world brimming with details is something that's a rare occurrence in the current AAA gaming landscape. Elden Ring. Elden Ring is a sprawling epic that takes you on an unforgettable journey through the mystical world of the Lands Between. Elden Ring perfectly encapsulates the sense of being on an adventure, right from its rewarding nature for player curiosity and design elements that force you to chart your own path through this labyrinthian space and much more. Elden Ring boasts excellent level variety and some of the best and most brutal bosses that we've ever seen in gaming so far. In addition to this, you also get to experiment with different weapons, and that combined with the gargantuan open world is what will keep you coming back playthrough after playthrough. Red Dead Redemption 2. Red Dead Redemption 2 is more than just an open world game about riding horses and looting village banks. It's a genuinely moving tale about the nature of change. It tells a heart-wrenching story about the Van der Linde gang trying to find its place in a rapidly changing world, and the gradual descent of these wonderfully realized characters is what hooks you to the narrative. That descent is also perfectly contrasted with the protagonist's personal journey of redemption, as he forgoes the life he always knew in favor of doing something good with his time. The open world and surrounding gameplay elements are built to compel players to take their own merry time exploring and tracking quests, and the journey becomes all the more rewarding with the time that you spend with it. It's a beautiful game with some of the strongest writing that we've ever seen from Rockstar, and it continues to be one of the best games that you can experience right now.